please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting.
Motion.
Is there a second?
There is.
Any
A second.
Very good. Any discussion?
The motion that he just made.
Any discussion?
Do you have anything to say?
No,
No, we have nothing to say.
Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approval of today's agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion carries. The agenda is approved. Two quick things before we move on. First of all, I'd like to welcome Sherry Clifford, our newest member of the committee. Welcome. I also need a volunteer to be the scribe and take notes for today's meeting. I think, Randy, you did it last month, so Randy's out of the running.
I'll take care of it,
Bob, thank you.
as long as the internet works.
All right, the next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the August 27th meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve that minutes as presented.
I move that the minutes be approved.
Okay, is there a second? Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approval of the minutes from the August 27th meeting, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is public comments. We have no one here. So we'll move to the next item on the agenda, and that's a review and discussion of the August 2025 monthly financials. And Sherry, I'm going to assume you've seen these meetings in the past and know how we do things. So we'll go through page by page, and I open the floor for discussion, comments, recommendations on each one of the pages as we go through them. That being said, we look at the first page, and any comments, questions, concerns on that one.
Good.
It should be noted,
Trending in the right direction.
yep, it should be noted that positive year-to-date operating fund balance of $274,000. Looks like things are continuing to move in the way that hopefully everyone is. Okay.
So what are you saying? It's continuing to move.
Move as we had hoped. Things are in the black. The operations are running as expected, and we're very good with regard to the variances against the budget.
We agreed.
All right. Next item is the operating account summary. Any questions on that page?
Have we asked in the past other fees and income? That number keeps on in June, it was 54,000 over, and then 50 grand over, an additional 50 in July. So it keeps growing. Do we know what those numbers are?
Yeah, that I don't know. Some of them are grants. I don't, they're certainly not assessments.
Okay.
But let's move that to, so we get a specific answer from the finance team, so we're not guessing.
Yeah,
So
okay.
why don't I put that down as one of the
I mean, it's a
items.
good number.
Yeah. Okay, so that'll be one of our first questions, other fees. Okay, any other questions on the operating account summary? Good. I see nothing there as well. All right, thanks, everyone. Next item is the operating results. Any questions on that one? I have one comment. I just wanted to point out that if you look at rec and parks and golf, they're approximately 62,000 above the revenue projections. And I don't know if that's a telltale sign, meaning a good thing, what trend is happening, what programs are functioning very, very well. But if you look at those two items, it accounts for 62,000 above the revenue projection, which I thought was significant and noteworthy.
Above budget or above last year's production?
Well, I think you have to go to the specific report for those things, but in general, this is above what is projected as budget. So it's favoritism to budget, versus looking at because me, I always go back when we're looking at the specific reports and I look at year-to-date actuals from this year and year-to-date actuals from last year. And that's kind of one of my, that's one of my key indicators to say, are we doing, and on a more macro basis, are we doing, what we plan on doing?
In the notes, they additional information, which would basically saying that's how much they've received over their planned budget.
Hmm.
So get a little more clarity.
Yeah.
But just another note there, from this indication and from looking down below also, racket sports is down. That what we're saying there. Revenues for this year must be lower than last year.
Yeah, I was gonna say my comment for racket sports, it's until the actual,
Yeah.
individual.
There may be an age factor associated with that. I mean, I don't play racket sports. Do you play racket sports anymore?
Racket sports.
It's a safety factor thing, the mind thinks you're 50, but the body knows you're 80s and you don't do well. It's not a good mix.
Not gonna argue that. At the same time, personal thought process.
Well, I mean, the thing would be
And then I
A
realized-
good answer for a variance, you know what I mean? It's the aging.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if it's worthwhile to pursue, but, are the demographics of our community, consistent with what an active racket sports community would be like. I'm not ready to say the answer is no, because there's a lot of young people in this, community that will take that on. I just don't know if that's I don't know if we have enough quote unquote evidence that that would be, a factor to consider moving forward.
Right.
Again, let's address the, 800-pound gorilla in the room, and that is that fee structure change. And I still think that people are kind of processing it in their mind, whether or not it's beneficial. Personally, I would look at it and say, let it go for a year, see what happens over an entire year. I don't like to make snap judgments on something. The idea would be, it's an entire year. Let's look at it. And as we're looking at the budget for next year, let's listen to what the GM and his team has to say about it, and then kind of figure out if we're in the right ballpark, which I think we will be. But at the end of the day, let's look at it in an entire year. Right? Any other questions on the operating results? All right, next item on the report is the net operating by department. And Sherry, if you've watched these meetings before, I tend to have a lot of notes and a lot of talk. I would hope that we get a little more anticipation, that people are willing to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to make the following comment. I'll just say that for a general principle. So yes, I do have one. If you note, general admin is 24,000 better on the monthly, 24,000 good against the budget. Does that tell us anything? Again, I think a lot of it has to do, and John and his team have passed, a lot of it has to do with timing. Things get booked at a certain time of the month, so it's not an indicator of anything else, other than, it's a significant number. And it's a good number, but the question is, was there a specific event, that occurred that allowed him to have that kind of a positive variance to budget?
So when they budget negative number,
Yes, 21.5 is a negative.
budget a negative number, and the actual is positive. What does that mean? I'm sure when I meant not bringing revenue in.
It could, I think it could be any number of things. Again, it goes back to, maybe it's also related to other fees and income that we looked at on the other page. So again, maybe that's something that for our, purposes, so we get educated, and that is, take it to the GM and the finance team and say, what were the particulars, since you budgeted, for a net operating loss of 21K, but yet, you were actually, up, $3,200, which was a variance of 24K to the good. So, what contributed to that?
Yeah.
You want to take that forward as a question, folks?
I think,
Okay.
I mean, I can see the budgeting negative and actual negative if they're not generating income. But it does seem odd that they would budget negative and have a positive. Whereas you look at the income generators, golf and so forth.
Okay.
The budget positive.
All right. Good thing. Anything else on net ops? We've got one more. If you look at, bracket sports, you'll notice that there's a year-to-date, 19,000 variance from last year in the actuals. So, we said in previous meetings, we were going to, just kind of track that and see if it, makes any significant changes. At this point, it's just a number. I don't know that there's any actionable items or opinions based on, that number, but, it's just, it's still there. Anything else on net operations by department? All right. Next item, next report is the operating summary. Any notes, questions, comments, recommendations? All right, well, again, I have one. If you look at service, and this came up last month as well, services and supplies is 35K greater than budget for the month and 71K greater year to date than last year. But again, it could be that, and we talked about it at the last meeting, there's a lot of things that might be front loaded, meaning that, an opportunity came up to have this expense happen at this point in time rather than, when it was originally thought of, it was maybe, 6 months from now. So
Well,
things are front loaded.
Would services and supplies include the food operation?
I do not think so.
Okay.
All right, but I will double check on that. In other words, it's a question, and I want to go back. I should have tried to memorize this, which I didn't. I think there's a reference in, if we go back and look at the answers that were provided by the finance team from our previous meetings, I believe there's some information in there that would help. So before we add as a question,
I think they do too.
I-
I looked at last month.
yeah, I'll take it upon myself, and so feel free to look at the other questions that were answered. If that answer might be in there, and I'm sorry, I apologize for not knowing it right off the top of the head, but that's why I do reference.
That's a good idea.
Because I do believe it has already been answered. So, anything else on ops summary?
On
So,
Yes, Frank.
the totals there, year-to-date actuals, 4.7 million or 4.8 million almost. And last year's was almost 6 million. Lot shows up in wages. There's 2.7 million actual this year, 3.5 million
Yeah.
last year. That's a big difference. Like
Yeah.
$700,000 in wages difference. And the idea is why.
yeah, I know that.
Yeah, I think that, it's very good to point out. One of the things that I always try to make sure of is that if you're looking at the year-to-date budget, the year-to-date actuals for the current fiscal year, that's based on a set of circumstances that the budget addressed at the operational level, meaning that this year's budget is different than last year's budget. So one of the things that I always try to make sure that I don't assume is that all the conditions from a previous year's budget, are the same in this year's budget. I think one of the things we have to make, take into consideration is the operating environment is a little different year to year. So, it's just an interesting comparison, especially on the revenue side. But, there might be different programs. There might have been a reduction in staff due to the fact that certain programs aren't there anymore and so on and so forth. I think it's a significant number, but, I'm looking at, when you, like Frank, to your point, the wages and benefits, but if you look at it with regard to budget, it's fairly close, because if you look at it, year to date last year, you'd have to actually go back to the budget that was approved for last year's budget and see how much that was in comparison to what was, but how much the actuals were in comparison to the budget, you know? So, I mean, it's a significant number. I don't know really, maybe it's worth asking and just say,
Well,
is it due to the fact that, the operational environment is different this year than it was last year? I mean, case in point, look at racket sports. I
Right.
mean, it's different than it was last year. And I think the GM, his finance team, and hopefully, the board look at it and say, we're talking about a different fiscal year budget with different operational environment, different operational, recommendations and operational goals. So,
I think that's the same thing that Frank did. I can't find it now, but I thought, maybe I was looking back under old data or something. But I thought maybe the food operation had an impact on that. Because we were budgeting for salaries in past years within the food operation, correct? We, as an association, is that correct? I thought we were budgeting for those, we had to carry that load.
No, it's not true. We did not have, those employees were the employees of that vendor that was running, the Mador company.
Okay,
So I want to double check that. Reason I'm hesitating, I'm just wondering if there was any changes from the original contract and the renewal. But, it's good to know. Quite frankly, this year, it's gonna be a lot easier. We don't really have to
yeah, my
worry
memory
about
goes-
any of it.
My
So,
memory goes back to the first time we contracted.
yeah, all the way.
And I believe that we picked up the cost.
Again, I'm sorry, I can't recall it off the top of my head.
But you may be right. I mean, there's been contract negotiations since then.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that I don't know, I looked at food budget operations and it looked like an offset of some sort.
Yeah, well, yeah, let's add that, just say, I think the question would be, there's a, frankly, $700,000 difference in year-to-date actuals, is that due to the fact that the operational environment is different than the previous year? Is that a reasonable question?
Yeah, why?
Okay, all right.
How many employees are there?
Ooh. So this is,
200,000 is one FTE.
Expensive.
Benefits of double here. Never got.
take this move. Okay, anything else on the operating summary? All right, next item, racket sports. Bob. I was ready.
Well, the membership dues, if you look at the variance current month, it's 68% of what it should be. And, or the shortfall rather, is 68%.
Mhm.
But if you look at the year to date, you're running at 28% below budget. The question is, I guess, is that going to continue or not? If you look at total revenue, it's the same thing. It's a 28% shortfall. But again, we're 4 months into it. What's going to happen in the next 8?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, to your point, we talked about it in previous meetings, and this is another one of those items in operational environment that needs a full year to gestate, before we start making any, statements about whether it was successful, whether or not it needs to be modified, whether it's fine the way it is. So before, again, I think it goes back to what we agreed to as a committee, to just keep an eye on it. It's not a
All we can
problem.
do is not
You know,
rushing, but
And,
it's
and again,
observation.
yeah, and I don't know how many people, I've said this in previous meetings, that, these are not, when we talk about these items, these are not problems. These are just questions to help, educate us as a committee, to, help understand the operational philosophy of, the finance team and the likes. And two, to help us get a better idea of the kinds of things we need to be aware of when it's budget preparation time for next year's budget.
Yeah.
So these are the kinds of things that we want to kind of look at. I know me personally, I want to get as much information from the finance team as possible. So when we're presented with a budget to review, there's going to be things that, I know why they're doing that. We agree. And there'll be other items that say, not really sure what that means. Let's discuss.
The best you can do, you have 7 months of data when you're looking at next year's budget and try to come up with the best you can.
Randy?
I'll say something positive about the racket sport. We haven't done that for a couple months. And the facility rentals for the month were up significantly, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were. Anybody else? Yeah, my note on racket sports is, under, obviously the net op, you look at it and it's, only 11K variance in revenue from the same time last year. So that, I think it ties back into your, it's 28% down, but it's, we're talking about $11,000. So anyway, we will continue to look at that and continue to make sure that, those who ask us aren't, spinning a yarn that says it was completely unsuccessful, it was a waste and so on and so forth. That's not the case at all. And quite frankly, not our responsibility. Any other thing on racket sports? Okay, next item is beach parking. Bob?
Salaries, wage and benefits. Year to date, we're about 41% over budget. And if you look at it, the budget for, let me go back and look at my notes here. For 26 was 27,000, so you're getting pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's one of those things you got to look at, because is it a case they had to hire extra employees that they're paying overtime?
Mm-hmm.
Don't have enough information.
Mm-hmm.
It's an observation that I think we should pay attention to, because most of the salaries are favorable in the other direction.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Yeah, my note here is, if you look at the revenues year to date and compare it with the year to date from last year, you're like 35,000 better. Now, this is one of those ones where no policy changes, no operational changes has happened for beach parking between last year and this year. It's basically the same kind of operational environment. So that's the fact that there's more usage, there's more people using the parking lot at the beach club. So, again, going back to my previous statement that it might be a different operational environment, that's not the case here. So that's pure, revenue that wasn't there in the previous year. Good to know. Okay, anything else on beach parking? All right, moving on, aquatics. Randy?
Member dues for the month are down quite a bit, but the year to date is well ahead of budget, so I don't see a cause for concern there, but.
Yeah, the aquatics supplies, you're 20% ahead of budget year to date. But the entire budget for the year for supplies is, supplies budget is 144, so that's the problem. It's just a matter of, I think we got to watch it. It could exceed the budget for the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of those, these are one of the items that, again, it goes back to tying into what we interpret as we're ready to look at the budget for next year. So in other words, let's say, for example, the finance team, ups that number from the budget that was, approved this year to another number in next year's budget. This is the kind of information that'll help justify that number. Let's say it goes up, pick a number, $20,000 in the next. Well, now we have data that says, yeah, we, based on costs, tariffs, any other thing that would affect the cost of, doing business, then, clearly we got to add that in there. So, good point. Again, not a problem, just something to help us understand what it would take to operate in 2026, 2027.
I wasn't here the year before when we did last year's budget, so it didn't without the background of what happened the year before, it was hard to ask questions.
And by the way, as committee members, I mean, I'm sure you're all aware that one of the responsibilities is for us to provide budget guidance to the board for next year's budget. So I hope I can get input from everyone. And if you don't have it, I will share with you the list that we presented to the board from last year for our budget guidance. And I want to make sure we do a very good job of, based on these discussions, the information we get, how we assess it, that we're making an appropriate recommendation to the board for budget guidance for the upcoming fiscal year. Okay. So, does everyone have that?
I don't have.
Okay. I'll make sure, I'll just send last year's budget guidance out to everyone. Okay, anything else on aquatics? And my note here was that the year-to-date revenues on budget, 91K, better than last year, and net op is on budget. So there's no real issue with aquatics. Next item is combined golf operations.
As always.
Yep, we got one note, revenue is 86,000, better year-to-date than last year. The golf course is continuing, to bring in revenue, and that's a good thing. Despite that there were reports of the course was in terrible shape, yada, yada, yada. Well,
See you next month.
yeah,
See what next month's numbers. are.
yeah, because I think the course took a hit, but it takes one every
Got
year.
hurt, yeah.
It takes one every year, around the
Who
mid to end
was
of August.
complaining?
You just hear scuttlebutt back and forth about,
None of the people I played with.
no, I don't have.
None of the people I played with. complained about
There's some fairways that got lost a little bit, but so on and so forth. But it is what it is. If you look at what they've done, I think this year, over and above what they've done in previous years, they've really taken a very proactive, quick actions to address the issue. Like the tee boxes they're replacing, all the stuff they did, they verticut in the fairways, and they're coming back. So yeah, but every August it gets burned out. It just does. It's just this area.
Were a couple of times, number 4, we've lost a couple of times.
Mhm.
This year there was more, and there were a lot of complaints.
Yeah, there were complaints.
Members and outside play as well.
Yeah.
But over the last 2-3 weeks, there's been a huge dedication to improving things quickly. All
Yeah.
those logs, around 15, were taken out.
Yeah.
A lot of things were done
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah, point
They
taken.
look a lot better
Yeah.
when I played Monday.
Yeah.
Monday's last time I played, it looked a lot better.
Yeah, I played yesterday and it was 2 weeks ago. So not to get off topic, but if you notice the fairway on 11, how beautiful it is.
Yeah, there are a lot.
That fairway has come, it's like a carpet, so despite there's other parts of it. But yeah, the point being, and you just supported.
There've been a
that.
lot of points.
They took-
People said the courses that are Bermuda grass are so much better than we are. We're bent grass in the fairways.
Yeah.
It looks beautiful when it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And
And it's garbage.
I'd hate to see it change.
Well, I guess go back to the original comment is that if it was so bad, how come we're still making money? Okay, so I mean, at the end of the day, no, we want to dismiss the fact that but the team there took definitive action quickly to address that, which I think it's worth acknowledgement.
As far as conditioning is concerned, do you think that the work that was done in the area of drainage had anything to do with that, with the piles of dirt hanging around all year long and, maybe people commenting on that, which, there's nothing you could do about it until the work is completed and the dirt is put back. Could it be that kind of thing that's generating any kind of negative input?
Well, the drainage situation is a whole lot better than it was 3 or 4 years ago. The other thing is the new sprinkler system, which is what created a lot of those piles of dirt.
That's right.
That's gonna be gone by next year.
Mhm.
And at least
That's
be gone
right.
to the point that they did. Now, the new part that they're going to do over this winter, again, will probably create some piles of dirt on the poles 4 through 8.
Mhm.
They're gonna do this winter. So, we might see some dirt disruption there. But in the long run, the whole course is gonna be a whole lot better
Yeah.
once the drainage, the sprinkler situation
Yeah,
is
you're,
complete.
That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
it's just one of those things where it's, again, cost of doing business, the idea of, you've got to do a little bit of disruption to make it better. You're investing in the course.
We're a little more than a third finished.
Yeah,
Yes.
your comment reminded me of the fact that if you recall, if we had rain, how much better the drainage is in the past couple of years, because a couple of years ago, if it rained, we were cart path only for 3 or 4 days. Now, one day, with cart path only, next day, you can count on the fact that you'll be able to drive out of the course.
Right,
That- I think
sure.
that's a testament to the team over there and what they're doing with regard to addressing the needs of that golf course.
Yeah, the overall maintenance, I think, is
Yes.
in really good shape. It's just that you hit that August problem. We do hit it every year.
Yeah.
This year, it's, the trees, I think, added a little bit to it. They took down a lot of trees, but Justin didn't have time to get rid of the stumps and logs and stuff, especially on 14,
Right,
15.
all that. That's right.
Anyway,
Yeah, but that's all gone now. I just.
yeah, it's all gone. That's what I heard from Justin and so forth.
Okay, anything else on combined golf ops? All right, moving.
No.
Well, moving. Next item is marinas. Questions, comments on that? I only noticed net op is 48K year to date, better than it was last year. So, I don't know if that has anything to do with the fact that maybe we had a lot fewer bad days where people didn't take their boats out. But again, these are, rather than trying to get too deep into the weeds, it's doing good. Obviously the cost of fuel, is a direct reflect on the net, revenues, or, if you look at the total revenue, minus the cost of sales, you're still in a very good spot. So. Okay. Nothing else on marinas? Next item is our reserves. Nothing on reserves? Okay, my note is the same as it was last month. No concerns at this time. It's too early in the fiscal year to see that. So we are fine. We're on track. And go back to the board meetings where the GM reports on the status of the reserves. I think he did a very detailed and complete, explanation of that. So we are right where we need to be with regard to reserves. Nothing else on reserves. Next item is capital summary. Capital summary. It continues, I've got no concerns at this time. We're right on budget. All the expenses are noted. Randy?
That's why budgeted. Summary block on the right.
Yeah,
Year-to-date actual was significantly less. Primarily due to the bulkhead.
at 928K against a budget of 2.7 million, but I guess it gives us a lot of flexibility, The other thing, and that I believe we need to be aware of, no, we don't need to be, let me strike that an emergency purchase / repair / situation, could affect that, but I think there's enough flexibility there that we're not gonna run into any issue with that. Anything else on the capital summary? All right. We go into the balance sheet. We had a number of questions answered from last month on the balance sheet. I looked at them and, again, me personally this month, no issues on the balance sheet. All right, the next item is the cash investments.
The allowance for bad debts went down a little bit.
Yeah, it did. It did. Cash investments, pretty self-explanatory. That was noted in the board meeting with regard to the cash on hand and how it's distributed. 17.8 million. Any questions there? And the final item is the membership report. Sure, everybody's looking at that next to last line on racket sports. So again, just another, another item to, kind of tie in with the other reports that we've got, then up by department and so on and so forth. Again, no cause for action, no concern. And I believe this warrants, as we said earlier, an analysis. It's going to take a year, to take and see how well that program worked out. Okay, with that in mind, we can move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's a report on the questions that were submitted from last month's meeting. Okay. Question, and I'm not trying to be funny here, but I always read these. Is anybody else interested in reading them, just so we hear another voice of the folks that may look at this, or if you're just tired of listening to my voice, it's somebody else? Okay.
We'll yield to the chair. I like your voice.
Okay, the first question was on the operating account summary report. What contributed to an 81K variance in transfer to reserve accounts? And the answer is additional interest income and casino funds received above budgeted amounts. The insurance funds received for the gym floor were also transferred. Okay, so that's how we got to that point. Okay. The second question on the operating account summary report, what contributed to the 84K expense over budget for administration and management? The answer is mostly due to wages and benefits favorability with vacant positions and a year-to-date favorability in medical insurance costs. Also, liability insurance and contract services favorability. All right. The third question is on operating results report. What was included in the 29K other costs? Okay, which goes back, and I knew we had answered that. Mostly special events expenses, which included July 4th celebration and the 5K race. So that's why I remember we had something on, the other costs. All right, the fourth one was on the net operating by department report, there was a 60K variance to the budget for a month under general admin. What were the details regarding this variance? The answer is we received a $50,000 grant from the county that was above the amount that we budgeted. The rest is due to favorability in expenses. Okay, the sixth question in the operating summary report, total net revenue better than budget by the month of their budget for the month by 67K, but 1.7 million year to date less than last year. Is this variance consistent with the current fiscal budget or a concern going forward? The answer is this is consistent with the budget as mentioned above. The decrease in surplus transfer and F&B structure are the main factors in that variance. Please note that expenses are also approximately 1 million less than last year as well, which is related to the F&B structure. Okay, so seventh one was on the operating summary report, wages and benefits are under by 42K for the month. Is this due to the number of positions not filled or restructuring of staff? And it is a combination of vacant positions and a year-to-date favorability in medical insurance costs. So, interesting, that's a good one. On the balance sheets, accounts receivable assessments is 1.1 million. Is the amount normal for this time of year? Yes. In July of 2024, the balance was approximately 1 million. And in 2023, the July balance was approximately 1.1 million. So it is consistent. And let's see. We have a couple more. On question 9, on the balance sheet report, there are concerns regarding an increase of 38K in allowance for bad debt. No, it's approximately a 6% increase from prior year, while receivables increased about 12%. This allowance is an estimate that is adjusted throughout the year based on collections and current factors. So that's a great answer for why we saw the decrease in allowance for bad debts on this one. Another one on the balance sheet, given the 79,000 under prepaid other, what contributed to the 471,000 amount listed for the current year? And the answer is bulkhead materials were ordered earlier and included 2 years of anticipated needs to avoid pricing increase with the unknown factor of tariffs. As work begins and materials are used, the balance will decrease. So, and I do remember the fact that I think actually even when I was back on the board, the recommendation back then was to purchase more than we needed as a price protection. So that's continuing. I think that's a good move. On the net operating by department, the committee's assumption is the $66,739 for food and beverage under month budget is comprised of income from the lease amount specified in the contract and the FY24 gross sales spread over 12 months of that current fiscal year. And the answer was correct. The lease payment plus the allocation of food sales budgeted that were calculated based on FY24 gross food sales. I think we had mentioned that in the previous year, last meeting, because I know when the GM was preparing the budget, the contract for food and beverage wasn't signed. So they had, and we said this last month too, that they had to base it on something. So they based it on the FY24 gross sales as a number so that the board would, could approve the budget with some reference point. And then obviously it'll get adjusted here, so it's fine. And then last one is additionally on the net operating by department report, the assumption is food and beverage under month actual for July is the lease amount plus the income from the percentage of food sales noted in the contract. Please confirm. The answer is that is correct. Okay. So those were the questions from last year. I want to thank again, as always, the finance team. They're always very quick to get us answers, and I think they're well stated. And again, this is all the kinds of things that we need to, as a committee, to incorporate as we start thinking about the budget guidance we want to give to the board. Next item on the agenda is general committee member comments. Randy, anything?
Nothing.
Frank, anything? Don, anything?
No, nothing.
Jerry, anything? Too new. Next month, you cannot use that excuse. Jack, anything? Bob, anything? I have nothing. That in mind, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
All right, see you guys.
Thanks. Okay. So just, not gonna set the whole meeting. All right, so I got 3 questions. One is, the other fees and income, what made that? And then the other one was the 24K variance in general admin. And, the, Frank, to your point, the op summary, 77K year-to-date variance due to, it was due to a fact that it's a different operational environment, a different operational budget. All right. And Sherry, what I do is I usually I usually get home. So before I get involved in other things, and I'm redoing my side yard, so I'm going to do some more manual labor. But I put the questions out there and I sent it to everybody and said, please. And by the way, just so you guys, if there's another question that comes up that you go, I didn't bring this up at the meeting. I want to feel free to add, change, modify. It's all, there's a group effort here. And then I take those, I give them to, and by the way, Monica's out of town. I think I mentioned that in the email. So,
Okay, an excuse.
well, I mean, technically, the only people can get an excused absence is a committee member. Remember, the board liaison is not a committee member. Okay, and so, they can choose to send someone or, not send someone. I know when I was going to be out of town when I was a board liaison, I asked somebody else to sit in for me, at a committee meeting. So I'll get these out here soon, and like I said, feel free to add things. I also made a note to send the budget guidance that we sent to the board last year to everybody, so you can look at it, review, because the budget prep starts this month.
All right.
So unfortunately, I wish we had a little more information about the racket sports, but at the end of the day, I've learned, you've learned, you're not going to be able to please everybody. It just doesn't work that way.
Yep.
And if you bang your head against the wall trying to do that, you're an idiot. I mean, it's that simple. So, that's it. Thanks, everybody, for your